special episode of the Total Beginner Freedive podcast. This is episode 11, an interview with a mermaid.
Hi, everybody.
Now I wanted to do more of an interview type podcast after episode 20. But I wanted to catch up with this particular mermaid as she's just experienced some exciting events in her life, as she was a commentator of one of the premier freedive competitions on the planet, which some people call the Wimbledon of freediving. And right after that, she rushed off to compete in the Miss Mermaid USA. Is that right?
Yes, the Miss Mermaid USA competition.
Representing Nevada and placing in the top 10. So she's the most legit mermaid I know out there, Rachel Novak. So I first learned about Rachel in January 2020. I just completed my freedive instructor certification in Indonesia, and I was preparing to head back to Las Vegas for an extended stay where my folks live. And so I searched on Google, and I found this YouTube video called Freediver in Las Vegas, Dry Training and Running Off to Join the Circus on her YouTube channel, Sailing Siren. So I reached out to her, and eventually we met up in Vegas. We did our first dive in the cold, was it Lake Mojave, which is downstream.
Mojave,
yeah, downstream from Hoover Dam, and with Lake Mead on the other side. And I discovered she's quite a bit like me in that she has so many interests, but the only difference is that she's been able to pursue all of them and reach a level of competence that she was able to make money from a lot of them. So Rachel is a licensed pharmacist. I know a lot of unlicensed pharmacists. Freedive instructor, professional mermaid, scuba dive master, fire dancer. She was on a show on the Strip in Vegas 2 years ago, I think. Rock climber, fight stunt coordinator, sailor. And when you thought she couldn't do anymore, she's also a singer and ukulele player, singing the big hit, "Don't Eat the Last Mango," which you can find on YouTube. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think you got them all. Yeah, that song was really silly. That came from making passage in Mexico. We had like a 10-pound bag of mangoes, and they slowly disappeared over the course of the 10-day passage, and eventually it was down to the last two, and they disappeared in the middle of the night. So, yeah, ukulele has gone hand in hand with sailing for me.
Did you find out whoever ate the last mango?
Nope.
Bummer.
So sad.
Anyways, as this is a podcast about freediving, how did you get into freediving?
Well, so I got into it from several different avenues. So I briefly mentioned from sailing. My partner at the time, we did a sailing trip from San Francisco to Costa Rica and then back up into the Sea of Cortez. And my first free immersion dive was pulling myself down the anchor line to check for the anchor holding to make sure that it was set correctly. Between that and then when I was working as a dive master in Thailand, I always ended up getting put on the snorkel tours, and I absolutely loved it. So I would go take people out for snorkeling and do stuff on breath hold and still get to the depths that a lot of the scuba divers were getting to. And then last but not least, we talked briefly about my performance career. And as a professional mermaid, one of the things that I wanted to do to level up on my skills was to get into freediving. And I just fell in love, and now I've gotten to the point where I'm an instructor, and I really want to specialize in helping other mermaids extend their breath holds and equalize safely, so then they can continue to be better mermaids themselves.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll get into the Mermaid Convention later. But first I wanted to talk about, I was like, I knew, Vertical Blue was looking for a commentator. I heard that Donnie of the Freedive Cafe, which is, I think, the first freedive podcast out there, and it's awesome. It has like a lot of, I guess, basically the top freedivers in the world that you would ever want to interview. So check that out if you have never heard of it. But he was supposed to go. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be the commentator, and then I guess because of the lockdown, and many logistical aspects related to that, he couldn't make it. So how did you tell us about Vertical Blue first and Dean's Blue Hole?
Okay. Well, Dean's Blue Hole is the second deepest blue hole in the world, second to the Dragon Hole in China, which is 300 meters deep. Dean's Blue Hole is 202 meters deep, or 660 for anybody using the imperial method. And yeah, it's put on by William Trubridge and has been going on since, I believe, either 2013 or 2018. But it's the premier freediving competition. The conditions there are absolutely amazing because it's in this nice little bay, and the temperatures are fairly consistent. There is a thermocline that ranges anywhere between the 30 to 50 meter range, depending on the currents and the tides. But generally, the conditions are very, very good. Even when the wind is blowing at 20 plus knots, you're still having fairly flat conditions in the hole.
And because of that, you also have so many world records go down at the Dean's Blue Hole. Yeah. And that is in the Bahamas?
Yes. So it's in Long Island, which is the southernmost island of the Bahamas. The easiest way to get there is if you fly into Nassau on New Providence. And then from there, you take like a short 1 hour flight from there to Long Island. And once you get there, I was actually surprised at how remote it actually was. A lot of the freedivers are sharing cars in order to get anywhere. And I thought that I'd be able to run to the nearest restaurant. The nearest restaurant is about 3 miles away. So it's a significant run. And then getting to Dean's Blue Hole, if you're trying to get there and then train, you don't want to be running 5+ miles with all your freediving gear.
So scooters not a big thing there, yeah?
No, scooters aren't a big thing. I was so surprised. Yeah, the majority of the athletes get around by renting cars. So everybody goes in on a car and you all cram into the car and you all have the same set schedule, or you try and work out the schedule and share the cars.
Most tropical islands I've been on, scooters a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But was it, how are the accommodations there? Because I know it's not like a hugely tourist place, is it? So, a couple hundred people coming in.
Well, we stayed at a place called Harbor Breeze. There are a few guest houses and rental houses. So same thing, a lot of the freedivers went in on a house together and you'd get your rooms, or you could get like a little studio apartment. I ended up in a hotel room for the first few days and was surviving on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the most part, at least until you get used to it and you get into the swing of things and you get a schedule that works with other people's schedules. So for anybody who is wanting to go train there, I highly recommend packing away at least snacks or emergency food, just a trainer tip, until you get familiar with the island and how the flow of the island works.
It's a good tip. Bring some protein bars, yeah.
Yeah. I survived on RX bars for quite a while.
Cool. So how did you become part of the production team and commentating?
Well, so a lot of the guys that I was freediving with here in Vegas, so we train 3 times a week, and they're like, hey, so I saw that Vertical Blue put out a Facebook post and they were looking for a commentator. You should go check it out. And so I looked on there, and the people for Vertical Blue were looking for somebody with freediving experience with vlogging, which I do have a vlog, and so I felt fairly comfortable. And then they were looking for somebody who was comfortable in front of a camera. And because of the performing arts and the pageant stuff that we'll be talking about in a bit, I felt fairly comfortable. So I was like, oh, well, we'll see what happens. Worst case scenario, they just say no. And I applied, and they called me back, and we had a short little interview. And Francesca Coe was like, hey, we want you to go be a commentator. So we'll see you in about a month and a half. And I ended up in the Bahamas.
Exciting. So, I mean, God, talking on the camera for hours a day, trying to provide and unpack, I guess, the technical parts of freediving. Which day do you think, what was there, 9 days total, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 9 days
which
total.
day? Because also, it was streamed on YouTube. So if you're like a freediver and a freedive fan, you can just watch it for free, right, on YouTube. It was like 9 p.m. here when it started. But and I also actually like rewatching them as well now. Which day in particular, if you're like a beginner freediver, that you think was the best day to learn from?
I would say the first few days would probably be very good for a beginner freediver to jump into. My co-commentator, Sean on the Beach, if you get the chance to see any of his streams, they originally brought Sean on because they wanted somebody who knew absolutely nothing about freediving, and they wanted us to be able to have a conversation so he could ask questions about freediving and, you know, make it much more relatable to people who are interested in getting into freediving. So at that point in time, that's where we were talking about like beginning freediving physiology, what equalization is, what types of gear all the freedivers were using, some of the things that they have to do to acclimate to depth. So I think that the first few days are pretty jam-packed with a little bit more of the beginner freediving physiology to give you an orientation into the dives that everybody is doing and what it means to be diving that deep.
Cool. And I think Dive Eye has changed the game, which is basically an underwater drone. Did you chat much with the crew that operated the Dive Eye? And basically, it's like this. It's a drone, right? That it's on like
It's
a
on a pulley
line,
system. Yeah, like on a
a
pulley
pulley
system.
system, and
Yeah.
then it live time gives you like video of the diver, and which has changed the game because you go down, all you do is hear the person like, oh, they're at 50 meters, 60 meters. Now you can see the whole thing, right? So that's totally changed the game. Did you have a chat with the crew there running the Dive Eye?
Yeah, so we actually got to hang out at the commentator booth. So the commentator booth was like this floating platform, really close to the competition area. And
How do you
so
get
I was
out
hanging
there?
out with the dive
You got to
all
swim there?
day. Yeah, you have to swim there, which the first day, you know, you're just kind of working out the kinks of like how everything is supposed to work. And they're like, Rachel, we need you and Sean out there now. We're like, how do we get our electronics out there? We're supposed to be using our electronics because like I had painstakingly written note cards for divers' histories and, you know, just a little bit of information that they had given me and what their dives were going to be. And we're supposed to be out there and you don't have a way of getting your stuff out there. So another pro tip, make sure that you bring a dry bag. A lot of the divers were actually using buckets. So you'd swim out there with a huge bucket, which we ended up getting. I got a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. And so, you know, if you're out there for 6 hours a day, you throw your clothes in there, your towel, your water, your snacks, and then your cell phone and your note cards, and you swim it out there. And then in between breaks for the 10 to 15 minute breaks, you go and you snorkel or you go free dive and kind of just hang out with people.
Awesome. And which dives did you enjoy the most watching?
Oh man, I would say that there were a lot of very memorable dives. I would say the two that I would give the best for style points were Pepe Salcedo's dive. Did you get to see his dive? It was
The
90 to
mouth,
91.
where he
Yeah,
got
he
the tag
grabbed
with the mouth?
yeah, and we're diving down. We're like, oh man, we're so worried. He went past the bottom plate. Hope everything's okay. And then he comes back up, and we're like, we didn't see him grab a bottom tag, but if he does have a bottom tag, then that's a new or a new national record for Mexico. And he comes up and he spits it out. And so definitely it was probably not the most ideal for any new freediver. Don't be stretching out your neck because it can predispose you to a trachea squeeze. But he definitely got style points for that. Another style point one was
Did you talk to him whether he planned that or not? Because it seemed like he missed it, and he was just like, "Well, my mouth is right there. I might as well get it that way, right?"
We didn't get to chat about that too much, but he definitely had a lot of fun with it. If you ever get the chance to meet him in person, he is a very colorful, very flamboyant person.
He looks like it.
Lots and lots of energy. So
yeah,
I really liked his dive. Another one that has style points was Alexi's dive. That was his bifins dive where he announced 120 meters and then ended up doing an early turn. But partway through the dive, we're like, wait a second, what fins is he using? And he was using his new silicone core fin. So it was each diver has 6 dives. This was kind of a throwaway dive for him. So he decided he was just going to do it in his silicone bifins, and he did an easy dive to 102 meters. So
yeah. I literally got those fins like a day before he did that. So I was like, oh yeah. But no, I'm my next episode is actually about those, partly about those fins. I think those are probably one of the best fins you can get as a beginner.
Oh yeah.
If you don't want to, it doesn't have like the nice, beautiful long fins of it, but basically because it's so versatile. You can travel with it, you can scuba dive with it, and why spend $100 on plastic fins when you can get these, and then you can upgrade to like fiberglass or carbon later, and you still have these as for training or traveling or whatnot. And I just took it in the pool. We're not really allowed in the ocean yet because of the lockdown. But yeah, it's quite good. Are you going to get a pair?
Yeah. I'd like to. I mean, I'm a huge fan. For the many, many years, I've freedived with my plastic fins because I love, like, I've been freediving with some Mars fins, the Mars
Hmm.
Concords, because you can strap them to your backpack and then just throw them on the airline, and it's
Yeah,
not a huge issue. So I've really enjoyed those. But can I talk about my favorite dives? So there's the style
yeah.
points ones, but as far as like one of the most elegant dives was probably Alenka's dive, her constant weight monofin dive. She's just an absolutely beautiful diver as well. And so just watching her come up and do like a clean surface protocol, she's one of those divers that you really look up to because she knows exactly what she's going for, and she doesn't try and push it. She really stays within her limits. And you know, she's pushing depths that many guys aren't able to get to yet. So
Yeah,
girl power to Alenka.
absolutely. Cool. And afterwards, I
Mhm.
know like free dive competitors, you have to live a really, and especially during the competition, you got to live, pretty zen, pretty clean lifestyle. After the
Mhm.
competitions, does it go down?
I would say it was still pretty mellow, but I'm also coming from a circus community or a circus background. I would say that people definitely went out and hung out on the beaches, and there was a bit of partying on the beach. And we definitely had like an after party where we had the awards ceremony, and there was a little bit of dancing there. And generally, yeah, people were very zen, and then you work hard, and then you get to play hard once or twice, and then you go back to working hard again.
Cool. And yeah, I was at Deep Week, which is the I guess the free diving camp put on by Adam Stern, and so you have a
Hmm.
party afterwards. I think we're all just too tired to do it.
Oh, really? Yeah. What was the scene like there? I still haven't had the chance to
Mellow.
make it up Deep Week.
It's mellow. I
Yeah.
mean, Deep Week is awesome. Totally recommend it to go. Awesome amount of information. Good
Hmm.
training from like world record holders, and then but yeah, the partying is a bit tame that I'm used to.
Well, I
Yeah.
brought my fire dancing gear out, and so that was super fun getting a few people out to play with fire.
And did you?
So we had a little bit of each fire spinning.
Awesome. And did you actually dive off the platform into the Dean's Blue Hole?
I got to go, so there's two different platforms. There's a warm up platform as well as the actual competition platform. Only competitors and safeties were really on that platform. I did get to go and do some dives off of the warm up platform. And then, actually, at the very end, at the last day, I was surprised at how little training I actually got in. But I actually did
Hmm.
get to do one dive session on the dive platform. So yeah,
Cool.
but it was surreal getting into the water there. It's just so clear. On the days that it was super clear, it was fantastic. Like the sand cascades into the blue hole, and so you just have these beautiful epic sand falls.
Yeah, if anybody's never seen video or photos of the Dean's Blue Hole, look it up. It is stunningly beautiful. It's amazing. Cool.
Yeah.
And so you and I being free dive instructors, I think one of the wonderful things, thinking back at like what Jacques Cousteau said before, is like people
Hmm.
protect what they love. People. So a lot of people attack
Hmm.
the sea. I make love to it, and so I guess it's we get to serve in creating ocean lovers, and I think a lot of
Hmm.
freedive competitors are involved in a lot of, I guess, ocean conservation projects there. Did you hear about any that some of the freedive competitors were involved in down there in Berkeley
Yeah,
Blue?
absolutely. I would definitely say that a lot of the athletes had their projects or nonprofits that they were advocating for. A few that really came to mind. One was Belle Winner. She was a Bahamian national record holder. So she just got into freediving recently and had the opportunity to set several Bahamian world or national records. And she was advocating for BREEF. So they're an NGO in the Bahamas that try to help keep the reefs healthy. And I actually got to see some of their work on Nassau, because they have different coral nurseries out there, and you can actually give them a donation and they'll name a coral colony in your name, and you'll get to see it grow and see
Oh,
it be
sweet.
raised. So yeah, so that was really cute and really sweet. Another one is Claire Paris. She had some very interesting research. She's an oceanographer, and she actually has microphones in Dean's Blue Hole that she goes to service a few times a year. And so they're able to, I don't know if you've followed some of the ocean conservation news, but the health of a reef, you can actually measure the health of a reef by how loud it is based off of the biodiversity of the reef and the reef health. And so she actually has microphones in there and is able to measure and create associations between the ocean life in Dean's Blue Hole and the health there.
Is that what we're hearing when we dive in an ocean? You know, like that sort of noise. This it sounds like static.
Mm-hmm.
That's the coral reef.
Yeah, so it's just ocean life. It's the sound of fish. It's the sound of ocean life. And I've especially when I was sailing, you'll go to certain places where it looks completely dead, and it's also very quiet. And then you'll go to this beautiful, bustling coral reef, like for example, when I was diving in Thailand, and it's very loud, and you can actually hear just the sounds of the reef. And so Claire was able to do some research on that, and she was able to also identify the sound of sand falling, and sedimentation of a reef. Like if a coral reef gets covered up in sand, obviously it's not able to photosynthesize as efficiently and stay healthy and get the nutrients that it needs. And so she was looking into, so this is all preliminary research and trying to find associations between noises, sedimentation, and coral reef health.
Awesome. And you're involved in something like that as well for your. I guess you're promoting it at the Mermaid conference convention.
Yeah, so I actually have a project that I've been working on. It's called We of the Sea. And kind of like what you were saying, the people who care the most are really the people who spend time in the ocean. So it's been a personal project of mine to um, give either reduced cost or scholarships to people to get into freediving and give them a diving education in order to give them like a firsthand connection to the ocean in hopes of like really spurring ocean conservation efforts. So we got to do something like this in the Philippines when I was training in the Philippines. I was able to partner with a local organization, and we took some experienced freedivers out and took some younger kids out on the reefs and talked to them about using less single-use plastic and the importance of coral-friendly sunscreens, so they can educate local tourists in the area. And then we took them out on the reefs, and it was the first time that many of them had ever seen like a Nemo or a starfish or a whale shark. They almost got to see a whale shark that day, and just like getting to see their eyes light up. I really hope that it was able to spark like a connection to the ocean so they care more about it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely. I knew the problems with the oceans, etc. But until I, started freediving and you know, intimacy with the ocean was increased significantly, that all my choices that I make, it definitely affects all the choices I make when I in daily life, right? So if everyone could just start there, even going to the beach or swimming, I always try to bring a piece of plastic out if I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and your mermaid convention, how did you? How did that happen?
Yeah, so the Miss Mermaid USA competition this year was at a mermaid convention called MerMagicCon, and it was held in Manassas, Virginia, which is about a half an hour away from Washington D.C. And because of COVID, they had 50% of the normal attendance that they would normally have. They kept it pretty capped, and just trying to maintain social distancing and healthy protocols. But yeah, so we got to go to a mermaid convention, and it's a whole bunch of people, just like in the freediving community, where you have your freediving photographers, your fun divers, your spearos, your competitive freedivers. You have the similar different subsets of a mermaid community as well. So, you have your cosplay mermaids, your performance mermaids, your freediving mermaids, people who like to do video work, people who like to do ocean conservation, and they all have this common theme around mermaiding. And so I see a lot of similarities between the two because both communities are very much in love with the ocean.
And also, I think the freediver community that I know, and I think it's similar with the mermaids, is that they are, even though they're competitive, they are crazy supportive of each other. Like if you know, if William Trubridge breaks his Alexi's world record, he's like super happy for William Trubridge. Or like, I think I remember seeing one competition, William Trubridge blacked out right next to him, and that kind of upset him. That affected his dive. And so, yeah, did you see a similar thing in the Mermaid Convention or Mermaid?
Yeah, I did.
Competition.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see, like you said, I wanted to comment on that. At Vertical Blue, Alessia loaned Hanako her monofin because Hanako's, like the foot pocket on her monofin didn't work. And there's something that got busted on it. And so just seeing like the camaraderie there, like an elite level athlete is willing to loan another elite level athlete a monofin so they can continue on with their dive. I was able to experience something similar during my competition because the airlines lost my luggage. And so, I had a booth there and was looking to talk about freediving as well as sell like freediving gear and merchandise. But then all of my tails, my dresses for the competition, all of my outfits, my dive gear, because I was theoretically going to help with safety for some of the components of it, all of that got lost. And I put a post out there, and a lot of the queens or a lot of the title holders reached out to me, and they were like, "Hey, what size do you wear? I can loan you a tail. I can loan you a dress. I can loan you shoes." So you see a lot of the camaraderie there. People were just so willing to like reach out and help you out.
It's just pretty incredible because, like, pageants. If you look at the like what is like the reality TV shows about them, or movies are incredibly and nasty competitive, right? And sort of to see that kind of camaraderie is quite warming. But you mentioned your Mermaid Tail, and I remember you telling me about your Mermaid Tail when we met in Vegas. Tell us more about it, and especially the cost of it. Mermaiding ain't cheap.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I do have a professional level silicone tail, so I can use that for video shoots, and it actually has a monofin that can get me fairly deep, so I can dive fairly efficiently in that. That one, a lot of the silicone tails can cost you upwards of $3,000, but they are very high quality. They're neutrally buoyant, and they're good for professional level. For somebody who's looking to get into mermaiding, you also have your fabric tails. So you don't have to drop $3,000 on a tail. Some of the nicer fabric tails that people use professionally are in the $300 to $800 range. And then if you're just starting out, there are some within the $100 to $200 range as well. So I do teach mermaiding courses, and my stock rental tails are in the $100 to $200 range. And then from there on up, I actually have like a tail that's more of a lionfish look. I wanted to do that for like poolside fire mermaid entertainment. So like fire eating and fire dancing while dressed as a mermaid. That one costs around $800. So you've got like quite a range. I've started to build a collection of tails.
So outside of the tails for mermaiding, what else do you need?
As far as for teaching or for
Equipment
performance?
to be a mermaid.
Well, as far as equipment, I mean, this is the silly part where it goes into gigs, right? So fake lashes, crowns, swimsuit tops that have, shells on them, sequins, sparkly things. So, it's a really interesting, I was talking with Ollie about this recently. Mermaiding is kind of at this interesting juxtaposition between modeling and freediving. And so it's very artfully done freediving.
Ollie, by the way, sorry.
Yeah.
Ollie, by the way, was my instructor in Indonesia for my instructor certification, I believe. Yeah, he also did our crossover to Patty online over 2 years, last year, and I think he was the safety at the mermaid the Miss Mermaid thing pageant.
Yeah. And so part of the mermaid competition, you are supposed to do an underwater distance swim on one breath. And for anybody who free dives, it's essentially a dynamic dive with a monofin on, although it's like a mermaid monofin as opposed to like a competitive monofin that we would see in freediving. The monofin was standardized, so everybody dived in the same monofin, so you could have almost a level playing field. But yeah, Ollie was the safety for that as well.
And how did you do on that competition?
So that part went well. I would say I wanted to play it safe because obviously I was fairly sleep deprived between stressing out with not getting all of my equipment in time and then trying to run a booth. So I did 75 meters. Each person, if you dive more, well, yards actually, because it's the US, but full points were awarded after 50 yards. And so I did 75 fairly comfortably, didn't have a single contraction, came up and gave a strong surface protocol, and I felt pretty good about that.
So there's no point of doing like 200 meters, right?
No. And honestly, I feel like it would be kind of mean because a lot of some of the gals here don't have any formal freediving experience. You know, they come at it from a swimming background, or they come at it from a background where they like to just swim in a pool with it. And so for many of, you know, for an untrained freediver, you're stoked to get a 35-meter dive. And so I know that it was really an emotional part of the competition for some of the athletes or some of the competitors, because they did 50 yards and never in their life believed that they would have been able to do something like that. So it was really empowering for some of the gals who were competing.
That's also why I like teaching freediving. It's because like people are like, I can't hold my breath for a minute and a half. I can't hold my breath for 2 minutes. And then they did it. You see this joy in their face of like doing something that they thought otherwise was impossible. And it's just like, from the world that I came from that was a bit soulless, you know, it's great to see. So
Yeah.
what are the other components of the competition or pageant?
So some of the other points were underwater posing on one breath. So you are in a mermaid tail and a mersona of your choice. So I had my lionfish tail on, and so you do as much underwater modeling and posing as you can on one breath. And it's very, very different than freediving in the sense that your sinuses are often flooded. You're trying not to
Oh, because
have
you
a
can't wear a
funny
nose
face.
flip.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's the thing is it's not aesthetically pleasing for
Yeah.
a photo. And so a lot of the time, sometimes people are, well, some of the time people are actually flooding their sinuses. And so you're sitting there and you're posing, you're doing a breath hold, your sinuses are flooding, and you're trying to look as pretty as possible. And on top of that, you have fake lashes and makeup on. And so that part was pretty interesting. That was fun. And then some of the other portions, you had an interview portion. So you go out, it's like on stage question. If anybody's ever seen a pageant before, you come out in a lovely evening gown or an outfit of your choice. And the MC asks you two on stage questions based off of your resume that you submitted. And so that was one of the components.
What were your
Another
questions?
one is lifestyle. What is one, so my two were, what is one thing, if you could change something about yourself, what would you change? And then the second one, oh man, I'm blanking on what it was now. I think it was like how you would be able to if you won the title of Miss Mermaid USA, how would you use the title to make a positive impact? So those were the two questions that I had. And then the last part is your ability to model in both an evening gown as well as more of like an upbeat modeling. So you're basically doing runway modeling.
And is there anywhere that people can watch video of the pageant?
Yeah, so I have some on my social media. Each of the mermaids posted throughout the entire thing, but not unlike Vertical Blue. It wasn't streamed online anywhere. You could go to the Miss Mermaid USA Instagram. They did have it playing live on there, and then they were posting some of the results.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes of
Yeah.
the link. But you placed in the top 10, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So instead of in number 10 or within top 10?
within the top 10. The first parts, when you're getting through the initial stages to be in the top 25. So each of the title holders submitted in their resumes, and because of COVID, they were selected through an online process via resume as well as a video interview. So that was just to get the national or the state title of Miss Mermaid Nevada. And then from there, they looked into people's resumes. So this goes into your ocean conservation work that you do, your static time. So they were actually judging you off of your static time.
What is your static?
You know, over 5 minutes. So it was well enough to get placed in the top 25, and and then so that was just to get into the top 25, and then from there it was getting to compete at MerMagicCon to get into the top 10, and so that was based off of your pool part of the competition, so the in-water modeling as well as your dynamic.
And who won the competition?
So Miss Mermaid Maryland and then Miss Mermaid Florida. So Felicia and Nikki are our two title holders that are going to be representing the U.S. at Miss Mermaid International. And both of them are very talented gals. Nikki, Miss Mermaid Florida, and now Miss Mermaid America, is very, very passionate about advocating for the health of the springs in Florida. As well as the health of the manatees. A lot of the seagrass there is dying out, and so and this is due to human impacts, and so manatees are actually being threatened as far as like being able to have enough food to eat. And then on top of that, Nestle, the water bottle company, is pumping out exorbitant amounts of water out of the springs, and so it's definitely changing the landscape. There are actually sinkholes that are forming in some places, from my understanding.
Cool. So you didn't win it, and instead I am anointing you queen of all mermaids. What is the one rule you would make all mermaids follow?
Oh, that I would make all mermaids follow?
Yeah.
Ooh, well, mainly from a safety side. I guess there's not necessarily one rule. It's more like a guideline than an actual rule, but I would highly encourage mermaids to get into freediving. There are some potential safety issues that I've seen coming up in the mermaid forums. For example, diving with weights to make sure that you stay down and can do your underwater posing. Some of the mermaids are making recommendations to take a scuba course, but if you think about that, if you have a scuba course, you're weighting yourself for not only your lungs, but the bladder and the BCD or the vest that you use. So you're not going to be properly weighted, and sometimes you can dive overweighted, which obviously is a huge safety issue in freediving. You see the same similarities in mermaiding. A lot of mermaids, or some, aren't aware that you can actually equalize and prevent the pain in your ears. So being able to sort of educate them on some of the safety and logistical aspects could really provide a huge benefit to the mermaiding community.
So you teach both a mermaiding course and a freediving course. I think the previous episode, I went over what a freediving course looks like. What does a mermaid course with you look like?
Well, so for SSI, there are several different, I guess, courses that you can do. Max depth is 5 meters, though. And depending on which subset or which part of the mermaid course you're taking, it's either in confined water or in a pool, or you can do the ocean mermaid, which you're actually out in open water, out on a reef somewhere, which, you know, in Vegas, we have some colder water here. So really that would only be happening if, I kind of have the goal of teaching people like basic freediving and basic equalization and safety, and then, you know, doing destination mermaiding trips. So, you know, possibly out to Taiwan when restrictions lift. You know, cenotes
Totally.
in Mexico, that's definitely an area that I'd love to go and take some mermaids out to.
How many days is a pool mermaid course with you?
Oh, so it would just be a few hours. So
Okay.
somebody would come in and, you know, depending on what they wanted to do, and I can also personalize it, a 2 to 4 hour period. You come in, you learn about the different monofins, the different mermaid tails, how to don them, how to remove them, basic pre-equalization before you dive, In a mermaiding course, you're not teaching extended breath hold techniques. So the point is to just make sure that they're able to keep their ears and their sinuses safe and that they pre-equalize. And, you know, if a mermaid has a cramp or a mermaid gets tired, how she is able to, she or he, they, can sort of float on their back and get a little bit of a break before swimming to the side and taking a break. So, you know, it's a very, very intro level to freediving to some extent.
Gotcha.
And then from there, you know, if they want to extend their breath hold, then they just take a freediving course.
And you're teaching these classes in Vegas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm teaching in Vegas, and then I've been in the process of relocating from Washington. So being able to do some courses in Lake Crescent has been fun, and there's a huge mermaiding community out there as well. So I think that an area that I want to start focusing on is starting to do reels and videos for mermaids for their promotional work, just so they can, you know, have like a promo packet to send out to potential people that want to hire them for mermaid gigs.
Cool. So in Vegas, so it being the bachelorette capital of like the US at least, would you do, I mean, how many people can you teach at a time? Would it could like that would be a great sort of activity for a bachelorette weekend?
Mm-hmm.
How many people can you teach at a time? Students?
Ideally, I'd like to teach max 6. I think I could comfortably do up to 8, but by then it would be nice to just have an additional assistant. So that's on the up and up. So that's kind of the long-term goal within the next year or so, is getting more into the resorts here and doing, you know, bachelorette parties or, you know, just friends who want to get away for a weekend and want to do something pretty and fun and pose as a mermaid out in a rooftop pool with the mountains in the background and the Vegas desert sunsets in the background. So yeah, that's kind
awesome.
of definitely a goal.
So if you're an aspiring mermaid, you mentioned modeling and acting as one sort of gig you can get. What other sort of gigs you can do as a mermaid? I know Silverton Casino's hiring one. I saw to work in their aquarium. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What other gigs can you get being a mermaid?
Yeah, so you can do aquariums. I recently did a mermaid gig at a wedding. So these two guys, they had a marriage and they were absolutely in love with mermaids. So their friends got together and wanted to hire a mermaid for their wedding party. And so I got to dive around in a pool, and they love Mardi Gras. So I was diving for Mardi Gras beads and other party favors. Some other fun gigs that I've had, being a mermaid for festivals and other larger events. So I got to be a mermaid in a pool at an event that DMX was performing at.
Oh, nice.
So DMX got to play 3 whole songs, and I got to mermaid in the pool. And so, I mean, there's some very unique gigs that you can get out there. You know, there's video shoots, there's, you know, hanging out with kids for kids parties. So there's quite a plethora of different gigs that you can get.
Awesome. Let's start to wrap this up. But so I made this podcast for people to learn. I think when I was getting into freediving, there wasn't really much information bridging that gap between not knowing anything to taking your first course. And that's sort of where I wanted to fill in. But if a friend came to you and asked you, you know, money's not an issue, where in the world would you go to learn freediving? And that's just not like the freediving conditions or instructors, but you know, for me, it's like food or other activities, like stuff for your partner or your kids to do and stuff like that. Which destination would you choose or suggest to go?
You know, I'm pretty partial to the Philippines. I still haven't gotten to check out Bali or Dahab, but I know that, for example, for the Philippines, a lot of wherever you're from, a lot of the Filipinos speak English, and so it's fairly easy to communicate. It's fairly easy to get around with public transportation and mopeds. And then the water in the Philippines, not only do you have immediate access to depth, but you have beautiful ocean life. You have different wrecks that you can check out once you are a certified diver. And the conditions are absolutely phenomenal. So between teaching in Washington, where the water is cold and sometimes you have issues with equalizing because you're not able to relax, like you have a lot less variables that you have to work through in order to just learn the concepts of freediving. You know, I always say that if you can learn to dive in Washington, you can almost learn to dive anywhere because it's cold and you can't equalize and it's dark. But, you know, if you're able to take some of those variables off the table, you can really focus on working on your technique. And so I would probably say the Philippines.
Which part of the Philippines?
I got to train on Panglao.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got to train on Panglao. And then if you're wanting to go for more of the tourism and the reefs, I highly recommend El Nido, Siquijor, or Coron. Coron has some amazing shipwrecks.
But Coron has
also
the Barracuda Lake. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just in case people don't know, Panglao is probably one of the best freediving conditions in the world. You have some of the top competitors, top freedivers in the world train there, not year round, but you know, most of the year, or at least half the year. Yeah. So, and those of you who are kind of put off by not learning freediving in the cold and the dark, it's really not about being in warm water. I think part of freediving is it's so meditative. I mean, I close my eyes for most of the dive, and so you know, not having clear water shouldn't really be that big of a hurdle, I guess. But yeah, where's your next freediving destination?
You know, because of this summer, I haven't been traveling as post-COVID. Yeah, I don't know. Like this summer has been, the whole project this summer has been backpacking out to alpine lakes. So I'll do a trail run out to an alpine lake with a dive buddy and we'll free dive some alpine lakes. I'd like to hit up Lake Tahoe one more time because Lake Tahoe has, it has over 27 different wrecks in anywhere between 3 to 20 meters. So it's actually an underwater dive park that you can check out on breath hold. And during certain parts of the year, it's actually fairly clear. So that's more of the local side. Come this summer, possibly the cenotes, the springs in Florida or Dominica.
Awesome. Dominica is near in the Caribbeans, off the way east side, right?
Yeah. And so Pageant was one of the divers at Vertical Blue. She is a very, very passionate advocate for diving there. Yeah,
that's definitely on my bucket list. But you know, I guess in North America, anyways, the cenotes in Mexico, Dominica, and I get Dean's Blue Hole are the place to be. Actually, Florida has some great free diving as well. Anyways, where can everybody find you, and what are you sort of promoting at the moment?
Well, so I would say if you want to follow a little bit about my freediving journey, maybe you're just getting into freediving, I had the goal of vlogging about my freediving experience from having no formal freediving experience all the way up to the instructor level. And I had every equalization issue under the sun. And so, you know, equalization isn't a reason why you should quit freediving. You just need to find somebody who's able to help you work through that, and you need to learn the anatomy and physiology, and you really can get past some of those issues. So if you want to learn a little bit about my freediving journey, it's on the Sailing Siren on YouTube. It's also my Instagram. As far as
you did the Zero to Hero.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did the Zero to Hero with Freedive Plus or Freedive Academy Panglao. And then I went and did a lot of personal training. So I've trained out in the Dead Sea or the Red Sea. And then I got to do some fun diving in the Dead Sea. And then have gotten to train a few other places as well. And so it's just, you know, the freediving community is full of so many knowledgeable people. And so I didn't go straight into teaching. I went and, you know, taught my friends and taught my partner. But for the most part, I wanted to really level up past the instructor course before I started teaching people. And so
your video on Dead Sea, it didn't look like all that fun.
It was really cool. You know, you're basically diving over a sea of crystals. But yeah, and then I guess as far as other things that if people wanted to learn a little bit more, I've started a clothing line for mermaids and freedivers. So as you see here, I'm modeling it's like an athleisure line. I use it for a lot of my rock climbing and backpacking, and I wanted to do something that was multi-purpose, and you could also use as like a coral-friendly sun protection. So like rash guards and leggings that are all color coordinated for those mermaids and freedivers who like to color coordinate.
Awesome. And if they wanted to take a freedive course or mermaid course for you, where would they find you?
Aquanauts Freediving. So it's all under the same brand. So the Sailing Siren is like my personal brand. And then for my professional brand, look up Aquanauts Freediving. So like astronauts, but aquanauts.
Awesome. I think we'll just leave it there. Anything else you want to mention?
No, I just am super excited for when you get to come back here and we get to train again. So thank you so much for having me. And I had a lot of fun chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to diving with you again in the future.
Me too. And if anybody lives in Vegas or is going to Vegas, check out in Facebook group or Facebook the Las Vegas Freedive community, which is
absolutely
where you can find us. That's it.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on here.
Bye.